Good morning. I'm Dr. Loretta Farrell, Director of the Human Rights Institute here at Kean University. I'm so happy that you have chosen to join us for this important program this morning. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. We'll have a brief intermission after our second speaker. Restrooms are out in the lobby. Also in the lobby are organizations with information about how you too can help refugees in their journey to safety. In your goodie bags are surveys. Please take a moment to fill them out and return them on your way out of the theater or on your way to lunch. These surveys will help us to plan future conferences and events. Also in your bags are bars of olive oil soap, handmade by women of the Jerash refugee camp in Jordan. Thank you to Sati Social Enterprises for providing these. You can learn more about Sati and the work that they do to empower women at their table in the lobby. Educators, you can pick up your professional development certificates in the lobby at the close of the program. Following our program, there will be a boxed lunch available in Downs Hall. We will have students who can help direct you there. If you'd like to take a tour of our campus, and we certainly hope that you will, we have student ambassadors from our admissions office who would be happy to show you around. For those of you who have time, I encourage you to stop by the Human Rights Institute Gallery to see our exhibit on transnational migration. Finally, I hope you will feel free to ask questions of our presenters. Now I'd like to direct your attention to our video, which will introduce today's program.
The brutality of ISIS and the ongoing war in Syria have triggered an epic humanitarian crisis, the biggest wave of refugees in modern history.
Today, 60 million refugees, asylum seekers, and internally displaced, almost double the number 10 years ago. It's a rising tide spilling across borders. 15 conflicts, either new or burning again in the last 5 years.
These are not people moving to another country to get a better life. They're fleeing for their lives.
Desperate families stranded outside a train station, no answers, no help, nowhere to go.
We're seeing literally rafts designed for 20, carrying 40, 50 human beings coming by the hundreds.
These Syrians survived a crossing, many did not.
But even for those who survive, a rude awakening awaits in countries that are moving to close their doors.
They are in limbo, many for years at a time, who are living with nothing, absolutely nothing.
Hundreds are stuck here, the Hungarian government refusing to let them board trains out of the country.
It is the pain of parents who thought they were saving their children, hardly able to comprehend that this is the Europe they risked their lives for.
In Lebanon alone, UNICEF estimates 500,000 refugee children need education. Across the region, more than 1 million children have fled Syria.
Education for kids is a lifeline, not a luxury when you're displaced for so long. But half of the world's refugee children of primary school age get no education at all, and 3/4 of secondary school age get no education at all. This is not just a crisis, it's a test. It's a test of our humanity. It's a test of us in the Western world, of who we are and what we stand for. It's a test of our character, not just our policies. But it's not too late for millions of others.
All the sinners crawl, so they dug your grave, and the masquerade will come calling out at the mess you made. Don't wanna let you down, but I am
This is that once-in-a-generation moment when nations have to pull together. How we respond will determine whether we create a more stable world or face decades of far greater instability.
This refugee crisis is manageable, not unsolvable, and each one of us has a personal responsibility to help make it so. Because this is about the rescue of us and our values, as well as the rescue of refugees and their lives.
It is now my great pleasure to introduce to you President Dr. Dawood Farahi, President of Kean University.
Thank you. You guys are okay? I didn't see much excitement. It's Friday, right? And if you were not here, you'll be home, right? Say yes or no. No. Well, this is the 11th annual conference on human rights for Kean University. When we created this center 11 years ago, there was no such thing anywhere in the Mid-Atlantic area. In connection and cooperation with our Holocaust Resource Center, which is one of the oldest in America, this center's job is very simple, 3 simple things: to make you aware of what's going on, maybe to help you become part of the movement to do something about it, and 3 is to hopefully change your mind about some of the issues that relates to human rights and touch your heart for the atrocities that happen in the world now and for centuries before. Somebody is happy in the back. What we're doing tonight, this morning actually with you, is to give you a general idea about this issue called immigration. You've heard of it, right? Every single one of you in this room have your roots in immigration. Even if you were Native American 13,000 years ago, you immigrated to this continent. Some 400 years, some 300 years, some 200 years, some 50 years, some 2 years, and some like me, 40 years ago. Immigration is a very difficult thing to understand. Most people think that they come to America to take this and take that. But if you watch TV and listen to what's going on in America, the immigrants are the engine of innovation, the engines of creativity, and the engine that moves this country forward. Just imagine if the immigrants were not here. All the things that get done will not get done. That's one thing. Number 2, immigration makes this country beautiful. Just imagine all you get to eat was English food. Do you know how badly your taste buds would deteriorate over time? Just imagine not having access to Italian food, right? To French cuisine, even the German potatoes, right? Immigration is what makes the diversity of this country amazingly beautiful. Here at Kean University, we're one of the top 5 most diverse universities in America. And that diversity has allowed us to succeed and excel in things that people never thought possible. 10 years ago, we created the New Jersey Center for Science, Technology, and Mathematics. They said, women and minorities don't do that well in math and sciences. The fact today is that the 4-year graduation rate of the STEM students across the street from here is second only to Princeton. Yeah. Women and minorities do succeed in sciences. But what you need to do is to do something that most people seem to ignore: level the playing field. If you level the playing field regardless of the minority status or the gender status, people have that special gift. You take that gift and you enrich and nourish that gift, and you have what we have on the other side. 4 years ago, we did something else. If you look at the field of architecture, if you see anybody that's not a white male, you would say, well, you couldn't be an architect. Our Michael Graves Architecture College now, in the architecture program, have 50% of our students are women and minorities, right? Just imagine the beauty that they will create in contrast to these huge, big steel buildings that go nowhere. And when it comes to immigration, we have students from 72 different countries on this campus alone. And the beauty of these is amazing. One thing else that I want to say, and then we'll get to the program. I don't want to take too much of your time. The greatest equalizer in America is higher education. It gives you a chance to play at a level playing field. I'm an immigrant from Afghanistan. I came to this country 40 years ago. And I tell you that story because I think you would understand what I went through and what thousands of other economic, political refugees that come to this country go through. I had one pair of shoes, and the right shoe had a hole in it, and I discovered duct tape. So I put the duct tape under it. I landed in JFK, and I saw a whole bunch of taxis lined up. I had this huge trunk, which every T-shirt I owned, my mother put it in it. She thought that there were not enough T-shirts in America. So when I saw these taxis, I said, this is a great country. They already know I'm here. So I go to the first taxi. The gentleman was from India. And I said, well, I need to go to the YMCA in Lower Manhattan. In a very broken English. He looked at me, and all of a sudden, he gave me a smile that I'd never seen. I didn't know why he was so happy to see me, but then I said, well, this is a great welcoming country. So I get into the taxi, and we keep driving toward Manhattan. When I saw the Empire State Building for the third time from a different direction, I realized what he was up to. 1/3 of every penny I owned, he took from me for that ride. And then from then on, I became smart. I went to buy a car, an old used car, right? And the guy said, well, see, the price is right there on the window. And I said, well, this is a pretty smart country, so the government wouldn't let you put the price on the window if it wasn't the true price. So I was probably the only person in that dealership that bought a used car at full suggested retail price. I didn't know. But today, I have the privilege of standing in front of you. If that door to immigration was closed to me, I wouldn't be here. If that door is closed to anybody, you have no idea the suffering that they and their families will have to tolerate. Between 1933 and 1944-45, America stopped the immigration of Jews. Less than 50,000 Jews were allowed to come to America. Today, that stoppage applies to selected countries of Muslim origin. America is not a nation that does what was done in the 1930s during the Holocaust and what is being done today. I hope you understand that. I hope instead of being a bystander, you become an upstander. And today we have three amazing people to speak to you. One from South Sudan that went back to her diaspora here in the United States. There are 15 to 20,000 South Sudanese in that particular location. You'll find out from him. The other one is an Iranian American with an amazing story that I think you'll enjoy to hear. And another one is an Egyptian. And her story is as amazing as you can imagine. So again, thank you for coming to Kean University. Thank you for participating. And I hope someday you do something to help someone else. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Farahi, for welcoming us to campus and for establishing the Human Rights Institute here at Kean. I'd like to introduce our first speaker this morning, Quan Deloney. Quan came to the United States from South Sudan at the age of 9. He learned how to play basketball and used his talent to earn a scholarship to Indiana State University. Upon graduation, he returned to Omaha, Nebraska, home to the largest population of South Sudanese refugees outside of Africa. He founded the Omaha Talons Basketball Academy to help other refugees adjust to life in the United States, serving as a mentor, advocating for education, and empowering the community to advance opportunities for young people. Please welcome Quan Deloney.
How's it going? Quan Deloney. Most people call me KD, so feel free to call me KD or Quan. And it's really a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for the great introduction. As stated, I came from the South Sudan when I was 9 years old. I'm currently 28. Grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, and the issues that we're here to discuss today, as far as just the issue of refugees, is something it's always been a part of my life since the early beginning, and it's something that's going to be a part of my life until we can get to a place where even the word itself, the label and everything that it stands for, is something that can maybe become a part of history. For me, when I do events like this, the biggest thing that I like to do is really just get to a point where I can share myself and really just tell my story from my perspective, and really just share the world as I see it, and let my light shine as much as possible, and hopefully, especially when it comes to young people, it puts you in a position where, you get inspired to be yourself in a world where I feel like it makes it really hard to be an individual. For me, a big part of my story and a big part of what moves me today in everything that I do starts back in 1992. I was about 3 years old. And at that time, my family, I was born in a very small, pretty unknown village called Jordan in South Sudan. And And by the time I can remember anything, my family was already at this refugee camp in Ethiopia called Dima. And this moment, this was September 18th, 1992. And the only reason why I remember the date is because it was 2 days after my youngest brother was born. And so at that time, especially at that part of the world when, you know, a mother's giving birth to a kid, that process is really hard. I think 1 in 3. It was something that it's, you know, you're blessed if both are able to survive after. And I remember the first time I got to see my little brother's face. To this day, one of the most laid back, one of the most easygoing guys that I've ever been around. And I remember the first time when I saw him, just a lot of peace, you know, and a lot of love. And really just looking at this little kid and really just being overwhelmed with just really, really good emotions that I finally do have a little brother, you know, and I got somebody that we can grow up together. And I remember looking around, and my mother was nowhere to be found. And began asking, I think it was my older sister that told me that my mom was still in the hospital because she was having complications from giving birth, and they were going to keep her there for a few more days. And instantly, a lot of those emotions that I was feeling that felt so great began to transform into just a level of anger and rage that to this day I've never felt anything like it. And I couldn't contain it. And I really began to feel a lot of resentment towards, specifically towards my father. Because personally, at that time, even at 3 years old, I felt like it was somewhat selfish to bring a kid really into the world knowing the kind of life that was laying ahead of him. The camp that we were staying at was really in the middle of nowhere. And the only thing that we were depending on was the United Nations for literally our very survival every single day. And we were up against the elements, you know, not only the elements, but we were up against a lot of different forces that the level of suffering that I began to see already as a kid, it put me in a position where I didn't want to be here. I didn't see the point. And emotionally, it's that buildup got to the point to where I always envy whenever I would hear of somebody passing away and losing their lives. I would always envy that man, they got the easy way out. You know, why would anybody want to be a part of this right here that's going on? So for me in that moment, I began to get really, really angry at my father. And as a kid, me personally, if I would have known even how to take my own life, I probably would have done it. At 3 years old, if you guys can really just take a second to really just think about that. And this was a world, for the most part, it was built by people. It wasn't anything that was, it was people, you know, that was doing this to each other. And it was really people causing really what I was feeling at that moment. So instantly I began to pretty much just try to figure out where my dad was. And I wanted to inflict a lot of harm, and I really just wanted to, I don't know what it was, but the anger that I was feeling was something that I couldn't control. And I really didn't feel like my little brother deserved, you know, to be in a world where, you know, I already knew what kind of life he was going to have in front of him. So my dad was outside, great day, I think it was middle of the day, ton of sunshine. He was outside, I think he was braiding like a basket or something, I forget. And came from behind, you know, really just aggressively was trying to attack him, was trying to find a way to really just hurt him, let him know that you know, he's not right. And he couldn't feel it. My dad is a really, really big guy, even compared to me. He's a lot taller and just a massive, massive human being. So to get his attention, I did just about the only thing that I know I could, and I began to really, really verbally just disrespect him. And if there's any Africans in here, or anybody with the African lineage, you all know that even disagreeing with a parent is a cardinal sin, to where that was something that I knew right away it was going to get his attention. And he got up, dropped everything that he was doing. And if you can just picture this massive guy standing up, and he almost towered over me, pretty much covered the whole sky. And I was terrified. And as he was walking towards me, I can tell that the look in his face was beginning to change a little bit. And I began to see just a level of compassion because he did, in a lot of ways, understand exactly what I was feeling. And he walked right by me into one of our huts that we were staying in this camp. And he came out with a newer Bible. My dad was one of the first missionaries that introduced the gospel and Christianity to the part of the world that I'm from. So he was very, very much in tune with the Bible at that time. And he came back out with it and sat me in his lap and pretty much read the verse Jeremiah 29:11 to me. Changed my life. And that verse is, "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope in the future." Hearing that, especially within that moment, was the only thing that logically and mentally made any sense to anything that was going on. There has to be a reason for it. There has to be a reason why we're going through any of this stuff that we're having to go through, and there has to be a reason why, even as kids, we had to put up with it. And that was the only thing that it literally shifted the trajectory of just who I am and everything inside me. It put me in a space where, if you can imagine just a river flowing, and you have a log just flowing down this river, and just wherever the current was taking it, it was going to take it. That was instantly where, hearing that verse, that was instantly where, mentally and internally, the space inside of me began to shift there. And I guess you could call it cruise control. I began to go through a lot of the stuff that we were going through, just very detached from a lot of just the emotional baggages and a lot of just the mental strains that could come with seeing a lot of the stuff that we were seeing at the time. And as time went on, I began to, this camp was really in the middle of nowhere, where there was a lot of land and a lot of areas that human beings have not really interacted with or even touched. And I began to, really just leave every single day. I would spend just about every single day in nature. And over time, I got to a point where it was really, really hard to be around people every time I came back to the camp. And a lot of what was going on and a lot of what we was dealing with were stuff that was slowly, they're still unraveling in my mind right now, but they were slowly beginning to make sense. Every time I would go out into nature, there was times where I would be gone for days. And I would find all kind of fruits, that I can pretty much eat out there for days, all kind of roots. There was things like fishes that were really, really easy to catch even for a kid. And then not only that, there was just a piece about just that landscape and the different things that I got to see, the waterfalls, the different plants, and just the plant and animal life, that interaction were things that began to just give me a lot of peace and really just kept me away from a lot of the chaos that was going on. And every time I came back to this camp, people were complaining about not having enough food to eat. They were complaining about the fact that the UN has not shown up in a few months, to really drop something off to feed people. They were complaining about a lot of just the social pressures, that comes with, not having things like money, not being able to buy, shoes, not being able to have, a shirt. And a lot of these things that, for me, I understood they weren't a part of the culture that we were coming out of. These were things that we were picking up and assimilating into as we were beginning to just, to just evolve into something else. And these were things that I knew they wasn't real. I knew a lot of the things that we were mentally struggling with, even the same things that were leading to a lot of the chaos and a lot of the death. These were things that were just in our minds. They really wasn't real. there wasn't a reason for anybody to really starve out there at the camp, just because we could have easily grown our own food, and we could have easily did things like hunt, and different things that we could have easily forced for ourselves. But that wasn't happening. And slowly, it's like this mental conditioning, of kind of laying back, and accepting, really just putting yourself in a really, really vulnerable position where it almost feels like you need somebody to come in and save you with something that we was beginning to pick up as a culture. And a lot of it was happening right before my very eyes. So fast forward to 1999, I stayed in that camp from 91 was when my family first got there. My first memory was in that camp until 99. And 99 was when we got the chance to where the refugee process was going to allow us to come to the United States. And for me, it was the first time that I even thought of anything outside of mentally can even just conceptualize anything existing outside of what that environment was. And it was a big deal. I remember the day that we was leaving, and it was pretty much a celebration, where, the village was pretty much a family, and everybody in that camp, we got really, really close over the years where it was a cause for celebration for everybody, that you got a family that was getting a chance to where we were going to get to a place where there was going to be opportunity. And I remember, sitting down with some of my really, really close friends, kind of, just regretting the fact that we wasn't going to be able to see each other. And really just talking about, man, what is this place, America? I've never heard of it. And I remember one of my really close friends says, man, America is the greatest place in the world. And the only thing he told me, he said, man, you go to America, you gotta find these running shoes. He said you step on these shoes and they can take you anywhere. And to me, that was something that I was really, really looking forward to. So if you guys know anywhere where I can still find these, I'm still looking. But anyways, over time, so 1999, we got the chance to come to be resettled in America. My family was relocated to Rochester, New York. I think this was about June 19, 1999, we arrived in Rochester. And by January 2000, my mom and dad decided to move to Omaha, Nebraska. And the only reason why they chose to move to Nebraska was Omaha was already becoming the largest South Sudanese refugee resettlement outside of the continent of Africa. And the part of the world that we're from, we're very, very much a collective, to where being able to be around community, being able to be around things that are familiar to you, and then just being able to be around a community of people where you don't have to go through what we was going through alone. And a place like America, compared to where we're coming from, it's two very, very different worlds. And it was a process that my parents could not assimilate to by themselves, so they decided to move the whole family back to where everybody was, which was in Omaha. And some of my earliest experiences in Omaha, again, to this day are a big reason why I do what I do through the Omaha Talents. Omaha wasn't ready, systematically it wasn't ready to take on a lot of the challenges that came with the Sudanese. And then not only that, Omaha is a place where, just the social structures of it, it's somewhat really, really segregated, to where, communities being isolated, and then even just the chance to even build relationships outside of the Sudanese community were things that everybody was comfortable in their own bubble. And we found ourselves in a situation where, it almost became an identity crisis. There were so many of us that we still had our South Sudanese roots and heritage and a lot of different functions within our community. But we were now in America, but we wasn't being exposed to different aspects of America, and we really weren't we really weren't getting the chance to grow into what, allows you to be a productive member of American society. And a lot of our young people were going down the route of really becoming just deviant in a lot of ways, and expectations was getting to a point where they were really, really low. So for me, I think early on, there was always a level of just I want to say just social awkwardness, to where a lot of what people think and say, and I feel like we live in a society where people are always telling us that what people think doesn't matter, or you have to be, especially as a black male, you have to be strong, and this and that. And in the world that we come from, we understand that it's about people. Life is a collective. There's a reason why we're all here together. And what people think, what people feel, how they perceive you, and all these different things, they do matter. And for me, right away, I found myself in a position where people were not, I know just externally looking and just the different, people were not seeing the best version of who I am. And they were putting me in a box that I knew that I could not fit in. And again, I had a really, really hard time with being around people. And that was a big reason why I gravitated towards sports like basketball. And the moment that I played it, it became the one place where I can go and I know I can express myself. I can compete, and nothing really has to be said. So I began to really spend just a lot of my middle school, high school days, really a lot of it in the basketball court. Took care of my classwork, but really socially, there really wasn't anything going on for me. And it's for me, it's something that I always felt like it was really, really unfortunate. I always felt like I had something to give. I always felt like being in a position where I can build relationships with people, where people can get to know me, and I can get to know people. I always felt like that was something that was always going to be a good thing one way or another. And being in a world where you're so closed off, and it's almost like you have to, be on scramble mode and figure everything out by yourself was something that's not, it's not a part of the world that I come from. It's not a part of the Sudanese culture, and it's not really a part of the African culture. And having to adjust to that was something that was, to this day, it is a challenge, and it is something that, as a culture now that we're getting to a place where we're beginning to kind of discover who we are in America, there is a social aspect of a lot of what we do that I want to be American enough to where we can influence American culture, and we can begin to infuse a lot of our own values, which a lot of it includes just the collective and understanding that it's about people and that we're all in it together. And my work with All My Talents is something that, right away, as soon as I graduated college, I knew I had to come back to the Omaha community to pretty much be an outlet for a lot of the young people. I was generationally, I was one of the first South Sudanese kids and young adults to really go through the process of completing high school and getting a chance to go to college. And through basketball, I was exposed, to just a whole different world that a lot of my peers were not being exposed to back in Omaha. And because of basketball, I was in a position where a lot of the young men, they gravitated towards me, and they listened to me for guidance, for mentorship, for advice. And even when the school system is at a point where they want to wave a red flag and feel like a lot of these young men are too hard to teach, I'm the one that they become vulnerable for. So I know for me, I knew that I felt like that was a huge responsibility. And when I got back to Omaha, I began to mentor. And within a few weeks, a lot of the kids that I was mentoring, all they wanted to do was find a gym and go shoot some baskets with me, and maybe I can teach them a few things. And within a few months, the small group turns into 30, 50 kids showing up, to where now over the years, we've worked with hundreds and hundreds of young men, all achieving incredible feats. And what the game of basketball has allowed for us. We're all, you know, physically, we're all pretty tall. We're all pretty athletic. We can learn, you know, really, really quick. You know, so we you know, as far as just the game, we made a splash where it made us visible, it gave us a voice. It put me in a position where I can be an advocate for a lot of different social issues that we were facing here in our diaspora community. And basketball has put me in a position where we can build leaders within our community. And we can build young men that not only the Sudanese kids want to follow, want to model themselves after, but also the greater community. To where I think there's something about being a part of a brotherhood, you know, and being in a community where you know that there's hundreds and hundreds of people that got your back. That's really attractive to just young people in general. And you know, right now I feel like we're just getting started. Got the chance to where we're going to incorporate the young ladies in a lot of what we're doing. And overall, you know, I think our overall message, and even just me being here, is really just what I try to do, tell myself every day. Try to get to a point where it's okay for you to be yourself, you know, and try to get to the point where you understand the value of learning how to be your best self, you know. And for me, I feel like the world that we're living in today, it's somewhat it's somewhat old. You know, I feel like it doesn't exist anymore in a lot of ways. You know, and for me, I feel like there's a lot of young people in this crowd today with just a tremendous amount of purpose that you feel naturally, you know, that you should not be afraid to look into. And you should not be afraid to venture out, you know, and even if it's just the world around you right now, don't be afraid to make a difference within it. You know, and get to the point where you can let your light shine bright enough where the world as a whole that we're all living in, you know, we can have the courage to say, hey, you know, maybe we can do something about it. Maybe we should do something about it. Right now, as far as this is Sudanese community and the demographic that I'm really focused in, our culture is being created every single day. You know, and the young people that I'm working with right now are those culture curators to where they are the ones that's laying down the expectations. You know, they are laying down those habits. You know, they are creating that foundation of this is who we're going to be tomorrow, and this is the world that we're going to create for ourselves, that we're going to live in. You know, and for us to get out of that stage of you know, being a victim, you know, feeling like it's you know, nobody can really do anything to you without a level of consent, without a level of you. We're all, you know, we all come from the same place. We're all essentially going back to the same place. But nobody can do anything to you without a level of consent. You know, and we're finally getting to that place to where we're recognizing that, and we realize that our life is really our life. And what we're going to be tomorrow is something that we're very, very, very conscious of. You know, and hopefully we can get to the point where, you know, we can pass that light to the greater community and world around us, and we can fully be what American has always been, which is a light for the whole world. Thank you so much for your time. Like I said, I like to, when I speak, I don't like to talk scripted. I like to just express who I am, and I like to share more of an energy. And I really appreciate every single one of you guys in the audience for being receptive to me this morning. Have a nice day.
Thanks so much, Kwan. This morning's next speaker is Donya Nasser. Donya is the 2015-16 United States Youth Observer to the United Nations. She's the first Iranian American and Muslim to serve in this capacity. A recent graduate of St. John's University, she is a passionate advocate for gender equality and reproductive justice. She works to empower women, youth, and minorities to become civically engaged and run for office, while combating stigmas and stereotypes regarding the Middle East. She's interned for the White House Office of Legislative Affairs, the Wilson Center's Middle East program, and the Brendan Center for Justice. The youngest director on the board of Planned Parenthood, Donia currently serves as the Herbert Scoville Jr. Peace Fellow at the Truman Center for National Policy in Washington, D.C. I'd like to welcome to the stage Donia Nasser.
Good morning. How is everybody feeling? Great? I should clarify that I interned at the White House when President Obama was at the White House, so it was a much better White House. Yeah. Not this current White House. I always say I hate not going first or last, because when you go first, you can impress everybody and like leave a really great impression. And when you go last, people are kind of tired, so maybe they won't remember you. But going like second or third or fourth is like the hardest. Like, would you guys agree? Yeah. Okay. So cut me a little slack. I have done a lot of speeches with young people, and I kind of always like to preface what I'm going to say by explaining that I don't like speaking at youth, but with youth. So I want to start off with a little exercise to get this crowd a little bit more energized. Are y'all with me on that? It's really fun. Yeah? All right, so I want you to find one person next to you. We're grouping in pairs of two. Well, a pair is two, so in groups of two. All right? Does everybody have a partner? Kind of give me a thumbs up if you have a partner. All right. Okay, so one partner is going to hold one of their hands in a fist, okay? And the other partner has about a minute to try to get that fist open, okay? All right, go. All right. Okay, now for those who were just probably attacked a little bit, now we're going to switch roles, okay? Karma. And the person who tried to get the fist open the last time will hold a fist, and their partner will try to get their fist open. Okay. This room is a lot more lively now. All right, so raise your hand if you were able to get the fist open. All right, let's say like 3/4 of the room. Now raise your hand if you got the fist open without using physical force. I mean, you could have just asked the person to open their fist, right? Please? Oh my God. Okay, so I wanted to start off with this exercise because I think that thinking creatively and through innovation, we can create a lot of solutions to today's problems. And unfortunately, by not thinking outside of the box is how we result in things like, racism, Islamophobia, and being afraid of thinking a different way than what we've been taught our entire lives. When I first did this exercise, it didn't even occur to me to ask my partner, to open up their fist. Because you're just like, okay, open up a fist. There's no other way that I could open it up without just like, opening it up with my hands. And so I like to use this exercise to really kind of get us thinking that nothing is ever the way that it seems set. Nothing is ever set the way that it is, okay? As young people, just because we're young, just because people think that we're not qualified, it doesn't mean that we're not able to do this kind of work in organizing and making change and really making a difference. And so that's why I find this exercise really valuable in trying to get out of that mindset. Would you all agree? Did that kind of make you think that way? Okay, awesome. So a little bit about me. I kind of always start off with a personal story, so I'm gonna do that. I want you all to imagine a young girl, very similar to us in this room, same age, full of ambitions and dreams. Like, raise your hand if you think you know what you want to be when you grow up. Okay. And raise your hand if you think you know where you want to live when you grow up. And raise your hand if you kind of know what you want to do after college. So this young woman had very similar ideas for what she wanted to do when she grew up, where she wanted to study, what she wanted to study, what kind of person she wanted to end up with and live her life with, where she wanted to live, all of these dreams and hopes and just goals that we set for ourselves. And then one day her parents sat her down and told her that she was going to be married to a man that she had never met. And she was about a week from graduating high school. And they told her that he didn't drink and he didn't smoke, so he was a perfect candidate for her life partner. And she was forced to marry him right after she graduated high school and to move to America. She wasn't allowed access to English classes, to college. She didn't have her own bank account, her own car. She was forced to work 18 hours a day. Her life was not her own, and essentially she was really, the autonomy that she had was taken away from her because she was somebody's property. And the only autonomy that she really had was going to her local Planned Parenthood clinic because they didn't ask for her husband's permission. And this woman, after 4 children, finally had the courage to leave, even though she knew that she would deal with quite a bit of hardship, not only financially because she didn't have an education, she barely could speak English, but also because culturally it was such a taboo to do this. And this woman is my mom. And the reason that I got involved in this work. Because if my mom had the courage to do this, and if her story was this powerful, then that means that there are millions of women just like her around the world who are dealing with this situation, who are dealing with their human rights being taken away, basic human rights to education, to autonomy over your own body. And this is why, her narrative is why I got involved in this work. It's what motivated me to get involved with gender equality, which then led me to also advocate for youth empowerment, because I was told so many times that I was too young to be involved. Even to this day, I'm 25 years old, but people will be like, oh, you're just 25? Wow, you've done so many amazing things for your age. But why, since when did age define when we could do amazing things or not? Right? Since when were we too young to expect that we would be doing amazing things? It's always a shock to me that people are surprised, and I know that it comes from a good place normally, good intentions. But I think it shows us, and remember what I said about thinking outside the box, it shows us that, you know, we have this very preset way of thinking, that we're gonna do things when we grow up. Like, oh, we still have time. But people teach us these things. We don't have to just wait. There are young people doing things at age 13. I mean, now I look at high school students and I think, what was I doing when I was in high school? You know, I wasn't like half as cool or qualified. One of my mentors is like 10 years younger than me. Because they're amazing. Because age shouldn't define who's the mentor and who's the mentee. Age shouldn't define whether you're qualified or unqualified. Do you all agree? Now, I want you to raise your hand if you're under 18. That is amazing. Okay, raise your hand if you're under 22. Raise your hand if you're under 25. Okay, this like entire auditorium. That is amazing, and this is like rarely ever how it happens, right? Like usually I'll be like, raise your hand if you're under 25, and there'll be like 2 people in the room, okay, in these conversations. And I want us all committed to having these conversations, to being in the room and being the youngest people there and really starting that pathway for that. Do y'all agree? Are you with me on that? Are we pledging to do this? To having a seat at the table, to having a voice in the room, so that we can open up this pathway for other young people, because our youth should not define whether we belong in the room or not. So something interesting, my mom was actually a refugee to Turkey before she came here. And when I was a first generation student here, and when I was a student, one of my best subject was English, surprisingly. And my teacher loved me, and my mom, and she was so impressed that I had the best grade in class at the time. And my mom was telling me one day that she had this client, and she was giving her a pedicure, and this woman was so rude and berating her because she couldn't speak English, and just really nasty. And I was so upset, and I was telling my teacher about this. And then we had this award ceremony, and I was getting the award for, best student in English or something. And, my teacher came to meet my mom after, and my mom kind of froze. And she told me after that was the woman who had treated her so poorly. And it's so ironic how these things happen, right? This woman is congratulating me for being her best English student, while also talking down to my mom because she couldn't speak English. And I think that also proves to us that I don't have any more worth than my mom because I can speak better English or because I was born here. And our worth is not inherent to these qualities. And the same goes for refugees, and why the refugee crisis is, and it's been a crisis, it's not anything new, but now that it's impacting Europe and the US, we want to call it a crisis. But this is something that we really should think about, because these people, they have value, they have worth inherent to just being human beings and in our humanity. It goes beyond whether they are coming from a different country, their religion, their financial background, none of these things. We all have worth, and if we give each person a chance, look at what we can become. I'm sure that woman never expected that this woman's daughter would have been the highest, the person with the highest grade in her class. And that was really upsetting for me, obviously, because it was just so problematic. But I was in high school and I couldn't really understand that. But when I started getting involved with policy, and have y'all ever heard of the program Youth in Government? Yeah, some of you? Where it's like you can write mock legislation. And I was in high school and I got part of this program, and I was so idealistic. I was like, I want to be the first Iranian American US senator. And everyone was telling me oh God, this girl is so stupid. She's 14 years old and she thinks she can be a US senator. That's really ambitious. Maybe you should aspire to be a doctor, a lawyer, or something. And that's kind of when I started feeling this ageism, right? People looking at me differently because I was young, and I had wrote up this bill, this piece of legislation to go and present. And people were saying maybe it'll get better with time, you're super young, et cetera, et cetera. And I started feeling this desire to kind of advocate for young people, because I felt like I had a more powerful voice when I went up to the podium than all of the people in the room who were older than me. So I didn't understand why my youth was such a big deal, and why it was set as such a boundary. And then this isn't only in high school or in college, this actually happened last week. I was invited to this event, this high-profile event on Capitol Hill, because I live in Washington, D.C. And this woman emails me, and she's like, hi, I'm from this and this congressman's office, congresswoman's office, and I want to invite your boss to this event. And I was reading the invite, and I was like, I'm pretty sure this invite is for me, but she is asking me to forward it to my boss. And I was like, okay, this could be for my boss. I don't think it's for my boss because my boss is completely unrelated to this event. So I emailed her and I was like, I think that you meant to send this invite to me, but maybe because I come across as young, and you kind of looked me up and saw that I was young, that you think I'm not like qualified for this event. So I just want to make sure because I need to be on the RSVP list. And she emails me back, she's like, I'm so sorry, yes, this invite was for you. I thought that it was for your boss. So this doesn't end just because like you graduate college and like I'm a young adult, but this is happening like in my work life almost every single day. So this doesn't end, and like it was really a shock to me that they had even confused me for my boss, like to do some background research and think, oh, maybe she's not like cool enough for her to be invited to this event, so it's probably for her boss. And she wasn't even embarrassed by it. So I think it just shows like how ingrained ageism is. And all this to say that having a seat at the table is so unbelievably important because, and this is one of my favorite quotes, are you ready? Because if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. It's actually so accurate though, because if you're not at the table, then you really are on the menu. If you're not able to represent yourself, your community, for the issues that are important to you, then those issues are not going to be represented, or they're going to be represented poorly. I mean, I'm sorry, but look at Congress right now. Look at how many old white men are in Congress, okay? And then look at the policies that are being passed and how do they correlate. Now, if we had more women of color in Congress, do you think these things would be happening? I for sure would not have voted for the Muslim ban. How many of you would have? Yeah. So I think that it's very, very important. This is why I encourage young people to think about running for office at a really early age. And it doesn't have to be Congress or Senate. It can be your local state board. Because having a voice at the table is so important. And all of you are so unique. Because this is not like, we're not like representative of the entire population. Like sitting here in this room gives us like a point of privilege that a lot of people don't have. And we really should use that to our advantage. And all of you are unique in that you're interested in these issues. You're interested in human rights. You're interested in activism. And that's so incredibly important. And you should use that, that privilege and your knowledge and your tools and skills to really represent people who aren't able to be in this room like us. And that doesn't have to be for running for office, but it could be going towards a leadership position in your community, asking to serve on the board of an organization and serving as the youngest person, because oftentimes probably over 50% of what that board is discussing impacts young people, but they don't have young people in the room. And like quick anecdote about why it's important to be represented. When I was in college, I was a part of this feminist organization, and I was the youngest person by like 15 years. And I was the only person who was of like Middle Eastern and Muslim background. And the executive director loved me. She was like, oh my God, it's so great to have a young person, tokenizing. But sometimes you have to handle that. And then one day, she added me on Facebook, and she saw me post something about Islamophobia, and she started sending me harassing emails about how Islamophobia was not a thing, and I couldn't identify as a Muslim and a feminist woman at the same time. The two were mutually exclusive. And imagine my shock, my horror, but imagine if I had not been on that board, this woman would have continued kind of spreading this taboo onto Muslim women that we serve. Okay? Because when you're a feminist organization, it's not just about a certain group of women. It should be all women. And it wasn't all women because this woman had this prejudice. And if I hadn't been on the executive board, then I would have never been able to single that out and like start a petition to get this woman ousted, because it was ridiculous. Because a woman shouldn't be telling another woman that she cannot identify as a feminist if she also identifies as Muslim. And thank you. And the point of that is that this is why representation matters. This is why having a voice and a seat at the table matters. And that's why when I served as youth observer to the UN, it was so important not only being the first in that role, but like really representing youth issues at the United Nations. And oftentimes, I was the only young person there, like by like at least 10 years, and the only woman, a lot of times, and the only person of color a lot of times. So imagine like them discussing issues that are impacting the entire world, like the refugee crisis, and not having representation. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine us discussing the refugee crisis without anyone close to, a background that might be able to offer some kind of insight into what's going on? I mean, that's ridiculous, right? And this is why that role was so important. And I want to close out because I want time for questions. I know they're going to kill me. But I just want to end with leadership is not about your own journey. Leadership is what you can do in your own journey to uplift people with you, okay? And thank you. Oh my gosh, this is the best crowd ever. I'm getting so much validation here. Leadership, what I like to say is that you should reach for the stars with one hand, but you should leave one hand near the ground to uplift your community with you. And why? Because without our communities, without uplifting people, we will never amount to anything. Our leadership will end with our legacy the moment that we pass away. And the importance of leadership is being able to bring people up with you so that we can create true change, because change is not going to happen with one person. Change happens when one person is committed enough to bringing enough people up with them so that they can make change together. And that's what I really want to encourage all of you to do. And if there are any questions, I know they're going to kill me, but I want to allow for at least like one question. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody? I never talked so fast in my life.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm 11. I was just wondering what I could do, because I'm probably not old enough to run for office in my town. So I was just wondering what I could do in my community besides that to help make a difference.
Yeah, of course. Unfortunately, they probably wouldn't allow you until you were 18. But I think that's unfortunate, because I think you would be a great addition to any Congress or Senate, local, state house, board. So what I would suggest, what issues are you passionate about?
I'm really passionate about immigration, specifically DACA.
Okay.
And the Muslim ban, because I'm Iranian, so.
Oh, really? Oh, hi. Oh my God, that's great. Okay, so is there an organization that you're already involved with?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, so what I would do, and I can help you, and it goes to anyone here, is that I would find an organization that is doing a lot of the similar work that you want to be doing, and preferably local, because I started very local, and try to get involved with them, and then mention to them, I would write a pitch letter, okay, and be like, I'm a young person, this percentage of people that you serve are young people. You don't have any young people on your board, and I promise you they probably don't. I would love to serve as your youth board member, and I'm willing to contribute X amount of hours a month to this project, and I will be at every single board meeting. And you would, right? You're committed, right?
Definitely.
And I'm sure that it would be so hard to turn you away, and if they do, we can start a petition to accept you on there.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right, they're gonna cut me off now. But if you have questions, I'm gonna be here, okay? Thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to take a very short intermission now, and I think Donia will probably be in the lobby, so you can ask her questions if you'd like, okay? 10 minutes. Ready? Go.
Lock the wheels on this. I think they are. No, they're not locked. They're free wheel.
Ladies and gentlemen, the program is going to resume shortly. Please start making your way back to your seats. The program will resume shortly. Please start making your way back to your seats. Thank you. Find him? Got it?
Okay, I think we're about ready to restart our program. Sometimes it can be really easy to become overwhelmed with the enormity of a situation. The reality, though, as Donya told us, is that we can each really make a difference. This next video reminds us of that.
We don't owe these people anything.
We don't owe these people anything.
استنى شوي باخد نفس. Close the borders.
Close the borders.
استنى شوي. Let them drown.
Let them drown.
The refugee crisis is about human beings. People. People. People.
People. Like me.
It's not just headlines. It's not just statistics and figures.
It's never been easier to ignore the world around you, to close off your heart, to close off your borders.
And to let hate go uncontested.
How do we save a life? We don't stay silent.
You judge others by their character, not where they were born.
Every single refugee is a human being. Never let hate and fear tell you otherwise.
All it takes is one person to save a life.
All it takes is one idea to save thousands. So, believe in greatness. Let's leave a legacy of children and of friends who do not let themselves succumb to fear, but made the world a better place with their kindness and their decency.
Who stood up on the right side of history, who chose love.
Just as this video showed, one person really can make a difference. And our next speaker, Sally Bruno, is the living embodiment of that. The child of Egyptian immigrants, Sally is familiar with the gray world of the in-between, shuttling back and forth from Cairo to New Jersey and all over the world with her mother. She's always known what it feels like to be the other in a community. As a result, Sally felt compelled to ease the transition of refugees to the United States by establishing One World, One Love. Today, with over 1,000 volunteers, One World, One Love helps to resettle refugee families, provide ESL classes, homework assistance, job preparation, and cultural enrichment opportunities. Prior to creating One World, One Love, Sally produced social documentaries that shed light on the struggles of marginalized people worldwide. A graduate of Princeton University and the Woodrow Wilson School of International and Public Affairs, Sally lives on the Jersey Shore with her daughter, Sophia. Please join me in welcoming Sally Bruno.
All right. Good morning. How's everyone today? I just found out that I need to scroll this as I talk, so if I don't do so well with this, please forgive me. As Loretta said, my name is Sally. I grew up in New Jersey. I was born in Washington, D.C., and spent my entire childhood shuttling between Egypt, the United States, and really all over the world with my mother, who is an engineer, who herself was the first immigrant of her family to come to the United States. And she herself, was a trailblazer. She was one of the first female engineers, aeronautical engineers in Egypt. So given that background, as Donia so beautifully said, we use our personal journeys and our personal stories to uplift others. And, given that background, as you can imagine, I spent a lot of time in different communities. I was very aware of different people's takes on situations, local, national, international conflicts. And, I always had this awareness of every side of the story, right? And to me, it was just natural, and I was raised to understand and to have compassion for everyone. And where other people might have seen others or enemies, to me, I just saw a brother and sister. And so having that personality and having that background and trying to make my way in the world, where as a student, you're often taught to follow your ideals and your passions and to do your best to strive to make the world a better place. When you graduate from college and you enter the real world, sometimes that path becomes not so clear, right? And I'm aware that most of the people here are students, and I'm just here to share my journey with you so that perhaps you can find some inspiration, for your path and what you decide to do now, as a young person, and what you decide to do in your future. So Kane University, seeks to inspire and to cultivate and to nourish growth, intellectual, cultural, and personal growth. I took some time and read your mission, and to encourage people to think critically, creatively, and globally as students and as global citizens. And I think this is really important, right? To look at the world that you're a part of and to see where, see all the benefits, all the beauties, all the gifts that we already have, and then see where change can be made and how you can go about doing so yourself. So for me, I grew up in this environment where I was quite aware that I was privileged, right? So when I would go back to Egypt and I would see people, in poverty, unable to, afford an education for their children, or, perhaps they had education because education there, unlike here, is free for most. They had education, but maybe no economic opportunities when they graduated. And then come here and see how much privilege that we had, even, thinking that maybe I don't have as much as my neighbor might. And so how can I, bridge these two worlds? And so I started, very young as a social advocate. I joined, debates and rallies and different, human rights clubs and organizations in high school and at university level. I studied international and public affairs, and when I graduated from college, I lived in New York for a year and helped produce social documentaries, bringing kind of visual and creative awareness to different social issues. From there, I went to Washington, D.C. I decided, I really wanted to work more at a policy level to affect change. So I went to Washington, D.C., and I didn't really have context there other than, some university professors, my thesis advisor, who basically gave me a list of 20 different names at 20 different organizations, and they're like, here you go, go start making phone calls, sending out emails, setting up, informational interviews, what have you, and see what you can do. And so I landed at International Relief and Development. I started out as a program assistant, helping to backstop to support programs overseas, mainly in conflict areas, Iraq, Afghanistan, but also in other areas, in the Caucasus, in South America, in Southeast Asia. And, I had, the benefit as being an assistant early on was that I was able to kind of be involved in a lot of different programmatic areas. So I worked in women's rights, I worked in education, I worked in public health, I worked in infrastructure, food security, and then, towards the end, as I started to move up from the assistant level to program manager, and eventually to department head at a separate organization, I was able to bring all these different areas together through integrative programming. So using community development, helping empower different communities through organization, through coming together themselves and articulating amongst themselves, what their priorities were, right? And so then they got to, and it was kind of the seeds of almost democracy building as well. So they got to articulate their priorities, vote on it together, decide what they wanted to focus on, and then from there, marshal resources that were in part met by us and in part met by them, so that they were empowered to meet their own needs. As Juan mentioned before, that's really important also when you're looking at the kind of conflicts that you witness globally, nationally, locally in your own community, to see, people not as victims, right? Not as, being in need of being saved or rescued, but to really see what they themselves have to give, have to bring to the table, and to find how best to empower, people to use these resources, to use the skills that are already, inherent within them, inherent within each and every one of us. So fast forward a little bit from there, I decided to leave DC and went to New York and studied law, specifically looking at, international public law. And the idea then again was I wanted to gain more skills that would put me in a position or give me the ability to make a larger difference, right? Because I was still an idealist at this point, right? I still believed I could change the world. And I still do, just from a different perspective. And so I ended up leaving the legal field. While I really very much enjoyed the study, I knew that the lifestyle wasn't right for me. And focused more on individual personal health and wellness. Now looking, how can I empower people on a very one-on-one personal level? And, I share all these different kind of pathways and steps that I've taken because I know we do have so many students here, and looking at your future can be exciting, right? You can know exactly what you want to do from day one. I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to, be a teacher, whatever it is, and that's great. But for some, we don't have that clarity, or perhaps we do and it changes, a year later, or a month later, or a week later, right? And that's okay, right? That's okay. It's important that you value and that you respect and understand your truth at any given moment, and that you honor it even as it shifts and changes, because that's a natural process of just being human, right, and moving forward. Charles Darwin, a lot of people think of him and credit him with, the theory of natural selection and thus, competition as being our inherent human nature. But in fact, if you read his writings, he mentions the word love far more times than he does natural selection and competition. And really the essence of his studies, the teachings of his studies teach us that community, right? Community is what really distinguishes the human species from other species, right? It's not our strength. We're not the strongest animal out there. It's not all these different aspects. It's not the competition. It's not that competitive drive. It's our ability to work together. And so even though there might be hierarchy, there might be hierarchy in society, there might be hierarchy in a business, even in a nonprofit and NGO, we're only capable of achieving all these great feats of civilization through community, through communal work, through working together, right? And so in recent years, as Loretta mentioned, I became a mother 2 years ago, and that was phenomenal. And I had been away from the field of international development and human rights for some time. And I was sitting at my kitchen table holding my then almost 8-month-old daughter and watching a video of a child in Syria covered in soot and blood and with a blank expression across his face, and there was fire in the background and lights and sirens, and the narrative was just that he had just lost his entire family, his entire village, and here he was just in shock, and I was moved in that moment, holding my own daughter, just imagining how I would feel, right, if, and how devastating it would be if that was her future. And again, we are all just humans here. The circumstance of my birth, that I was, born to a woman who was able to leave her country where she felt she didn't have enough opportunity and come to another country where she felt she had more opportunity and fight her way and work her way to achieve all that she dreamed of, that's a privilege. Yes, there was struggle involved in her story, but even in her struggle, that's a privilege, and it's an inspiration to me. And there's really nothing about who I am that makes me any more deserving of being in this position today than any of you or anybody who happens to be born, in a war zone, in a poverty zone, in, an area in which their circumstances are just different, right? It's just circumstances. So at that moment, sitting at my kitchen table, I decided to do something. And the day before, I had seen a friend of mine had posted on Facebook that she was collecting donations for Syrian refugees. And so I decided that I was going to do so too, right? So I put a call out. I teach yoga, so I put, posters up at different yoga studios, and I just started collecting donations. And, I use the phrase one world, one love, because to me that's what it's all about. We are all one world, one global community, and we should all foster one love for one another. And it just kind of grew from there, as I continued to post things on the internet, on Facebook in particular, I started to get more and more responses, and then people wanted to know what else they could do. And so, I found out, I contacted my friend who contacted her contact, and we found out we needed, ESL, English as a second language. We needed counseling for some people who, were suffering from PTSD. Job placement, people to drive them to and from appointments, things like that. And so, continue to put calls out and to start to organize, and literally started to get hundreds and hundreds of messages, right, on Facebook, in my email, because I started to put out my personal email, and it became this wave of response. And then what happened was, we had the election, right, and I know we have a lot of feelings about that, but one of the things, Trump's slogan was "Make America Great Again," and one of the things that I really truly believe, and I'm sure you've heard this before, is that in a way he is making America great again, right? Because he's motivating people to come together and to fight for what they believe in. And exactly that's what was the driving force, I believe, behind the response that I got to those initial calls, right? The reason that we had so many people writing back and saying that they wanted to help was because they stood for the exact opposite of what he was standing for, right? So sometimes somebody that you can perceive as your oppressor or your enemy or is doing wrong or harm to you gives you the greatest gift. So today, from that, I had been out of the field, out of the industry for a while, and even when I was in the field, it wasn't in a local capacity. I worked internationally, and so I didn't have connections with the local resettlement agencies, and so I just started making phone calls. I started sending emails. I got a lot of no's. I got a lot of non-responses, right? People just wouldn't respond to my email, and understandably, they themselves were being inundated now by all these other people that wanted to help them as well, and they didn't have the capacity to respond. But I didn't give up. I kept going. I reached out to different resources, and eventually one person responded. And from there, we started to not only collect donations, but start to greet families when they first arrived and help them with their apartments, because one of the things that was happening is they were coming to apartments that were really, really substandard, right? And it's not, to criticize the resettlement agencies at all. They're doing the best they can, above and beyond, in fact, with what limited resources they are given, to secure living, situations for people coming. For the resettlement process, both Kwan and Dunya touched upon it briefly, but families flee war, persecution. They often end up in host countries. Some end up in host countries for the rest of their lives, right, with no status, no rights to education, no rights to work, no rights to even marry, right? Some are lucky enough to apply for refugee status and are granted refugee status, but the vast majority do not, right? Of the over approximately 65 million refugees worldwide, less than 1% of them are resettled each year. Right? And when they are granted resettlement, first they go through a vetting process that, again, takes many years, and they're paired with a particular country that does their own vetting process. And then, it's a lot of wait, and then all of a sudden they get a 1 or 2 week notice and they arrive. They show up in their new country. And from here, they have a resettlement agency, such as International Rescue Community. They have a table outside if you want to learn more about them. And they come here, they have 90 days to set them up in an apartment and to get them, connected to whatever agencies that are going to be offering their initial support, and then that's it. Some agencies, such as IRC, have additional programs that last for up to 5 years, but not all agencies do. And so what happens? What happens to these people when they arrive? Some can connect to a local community of people from the same country or the same region, and they're able to get support, but some do not, right? And so, as Kwan shared, his family decided to leave from where they were initially resettled and move to Nebraska precisely so that they could plug into a community. Because as we all know, nobody does anything alone, right? It literally takes a village to succeed, and especially for somebody who's coming and a family that's coming to a new country, they don't speak the language, they don't know the culture, the customs, it can be very scary. That process in and of itself can be traumatizing. So, fast forward to today, what started out as simply one mother's desire to do something, right, to make a difference, to make a change, has now grown into an organization, right? We have over 1,000 members from all over New Jersey, all over the country, and even some internationally. And, we're involved primarily in helping people get acclimated to the community here, welcome them into clean, well-appointed homes. We also assist with job training, job preparedness, some job placement. We do a lot of advocacy, especially when it comes to children. Children are often placed by their age level, not necessarily by their comprehension, right? Their ability. And so what happens is not only do they have the language barrier, but they're also being placed many grades above where they were in the subject matter, right? And so unless they have an advocate working by their side to ensure that the school is providing the resources or that the resources are being provided from somewhere, they're kind of just being passed along with no real hope, right? They're given Ds and they're passed to the next grade, and that's that. And so we really want to see these children have a chance to build a future for themselves, their families as well. And so this is really, it's just ordinary, everyday citizens coming together to do this, right? You don't have to have a doctorate, you don't have to have a big title in front of or behind your name. It's just a desire to help and to make a difference. And so, if you want to join the work that we're doing, please do. Sign up out front. If you have an idea inside of you, something that you would like to share, a vision that you would like to bring into the world, believe in that and do it. Even if the first 20, 30, 500 answers you get are no, 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 right? That's all that you really need to have is your vision and your persistence, right? And then you take that and you continue to work towards it and you bring people into your sphere that are allies, that are going to enable you to grow that, right? So believe in your truth, believe in your dream, and know that you can make a change. It doesn't matter how old you are, right? It doesn't matter what your past is. You can use your past to your advantage for sure, especially your challenges, especially quote unquote perceived failures, right? Because what is failure really? There is no such thing, right? Even when we fall, right? We pick ourselves up again, we learn from it, and we move forward. And we use that experience to make us stronger, more compassionate, more able to help others. So if I can leave you with any message today, it's really just to believe in yourself, right? Believe in love, believe in the truth that you can foster and put into this world. All right, if you have any questions, I'm here.
If anyone has any questions, they can feel free to come up, and we're going to leave like 10 minutes open for questions. Anyone?
No?
I want to say a comment, just share something. Sally, thank you, and thank you all the speakers. I mean, it was very inspiring. And my name is Sally Pillay, and I represent an organization called First Friends of New Jersey in New York. And just to share that, on the other spectrum of things, the urgency of wanting to get involved and getting involved in this kind of work, and especially now in this climate, to know that in your backyard, right here, less than 5 miles away, is the Elizabeth Detention Center, which is run by a for-profit privatized company that holds a lot of migrants, refugees coming into the country, that in the state of New Jersey, there's over 2,000 individuals detained in these facilities, and there's a lot of human rights violations that are occurring right here in the backyard. And so I urge people who want to know and get involved in that side of things to please reach out. There's different ways to get involved, and I just applaud you for the work that you guys are doing to make a difference in the lives of another human being. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. So that's it. All right. So yeah, sorry.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, how are you?
How did you know that international relations was your calling? What gravitated you towards that discipline?
Mm-hmm. So, as I mentioned before, it was really my upbringing, having been raised by an Egyptian woman living in America, but really all over the globe, traveled often with her for business, and I saw the incredible humanity in everyone, the similarities. We're all human, right? We're all just, people, mothers, daughters, brothers, sisters. But also the incredible beauty in our differences, right? And wanting to be a part of celebrating and honoring that we could bring our common love through our common humanity, and celebrate our diversity and our differences, and make the world a happier and more productive place because of all of that, right? Instead of letting fear and the thought of other separate from that, us from that. You know, I really see fear just limiting our potential, right? So yeah, that's how. Any other questions? Oh, okay.
A question for you, from observing you from start to end. How did you face all the obstacles that come with establishing a non-for-profit organization in the middle of all this happening about the refugee and not wanting them, not for everybody, but the media and so on? And how did you come to actually establish that organization and bring it to where it is today?
So, thank you for that question. That's my mother, by the way. And I didn't ask her to ask that question. She just did. But yeah, so again, I really, in terms of getting the support and the interest, I honestly believe it was the policies and the rhetoric of this administration that brought so many people to this cause. You know, it's because so many people were outraged by what was being said and what was being done on the political level that people wanted to get involved, and they wanted to do more than just meet and organize. They wanted to make a real difference. In terms of establishing the organization, really, it was just, again, the momentum of the group, and what happened was we had so many people involved and so many people donating and so many people wanting to do these amazing projects that, you know, the decision, it was suggested, and, you know, I thought it would be a good idea is to organize and to establish as a formal group, because it gave us, you know, there's a freedom in not being a formal organization. You get to do things free of regulation. But there's also a lack of certain powers and legitimacy that comes when you are established. And so, you know, even though at the time I didn't really, you know, I have my other jobs and my other work, I didn't really know how this was all going to work out. It just felt like the right thing to do. So I just kept doing what was in front of me. So yeah, that's the other important lesson too, is that, you know, when you're following your heart and what you believe to be right, you don't necessarily have to have everything laid out clearly in front of you. It's good to have a plan, for sure, but it's also good to respond to what's available to you in that moment. Yeah, one more.
Okay, so my name is Zainab, and I'm Turkish, and when you said that, when you saw like a picture or like a video of a young boy with like ash and blood, I went to Turkey, I think like a year ago, 2 years ago, and I was by myself, and I didn't know Turkish at all. My parents weren't with me. No one was with me at all. And I was on a bus, and it was like, I think around like 10 p.m., and my phone started vibrating like crazy. And I remember looking at my phone, and my sister's texting me saying, "Stop, go back, what are you doing? Get out of the bus." And I'm like looking around, I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. And I opened the TV on like behind the seat, and the news was on, and there was like tanks everywhere. People on the bus were screaming and crying, saying, "Stop the bus." And never in my life have I thought that I would go and experience something like that. And I remember shaking and crying, and I was only 16. And I'd call my mom, and I told her, "I'm gonna die, I'm so sorry." And I started crying like crazy. And I remember soldiers were all around me saying, "Get out of the bus." And I didn't know what was happening, and I kept crying, and my uncle's a general. And I remember just shaking the whole time and like praying to God, because my mom is Muslim, and to me, like, that's very like, sorry. I just remember crying every day, and I remember looking to a woman, and she was on the floor screaming because her son got shot. We were being shot at from the sky, and I've seen tanks rolling on people's bodies. It was just it wasn't a great experience. But after a while, I started learning from that I want to become a lawyer to help those soldiers that were taken to prison and being tortured for no reason, because it was a war between Fethullah Gulen, a company or like an organization trying to take over Turkey, and I remember being really, really scared. So that's why I wanted to say thank you. Sorry it wasn't a question, but just wanted to say it.
Thank you. So I just want to say thank you for sharing, your story. That's, heartbreaking and very scary to live through something like that. But I think that, you being able to give yourself the time to process it and then come to a realization of how that's going to empower you to make a difference and to be part of the solution is exactly what this is all about. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Sally, very much, and thank you for sharing. The annual Human Rights Institute Awards place a spotlight on individuals and organizations who are committed to addressing human rights violations around the world and in their own backyard, and inspire others to follow their lead. Through their hands-on activism and advocacy, this year's award recipients are providing much-needed support and guidance to refugees who have been forced from their homes, thereby embodying the Institute's call to action to move from being a bystander to an upstander, to stand up in defense of people's human rights and dignity. Here at Kane, we believe we have an obligation to educate students about the challenges our world is facing, to ensure that they understand the issues and that they have the tools they need to address them. Our first recipient, a Kane graduate, has taken that to heart. Dr. Lamont Repillette is the Acting Commissioner of Education for the state of New Jersey, where he is working with parents, educators, and community members to create the best state school system in the nation. Prior to becoming Acting Commissioner, Dr. Repillette served as Superintendent of the Asbury Park School District, where he implemented new instructional and organizational approaches, including the Power of 10, a dropout prevention program that resulted in significant increases in graduation rates. During his tenure, he brought human rights education to the forefront, encouraging both teachers and students to answer the call to action. Among their projects was a collaboration with the Human Rights Institute at Kane and OEDA International, allowing students from Asbury Park to develop an online relationship with their peers in Agana, Ghana. This collaboration led to the creation of the Asbury Park Paneled Learning Center in Agana, a renewable and fully functional classroom space for students. Dr. Repillette earned his Master's in Education Administration from Kane in 2000 and currently serves on the university's Board of Trustees. Dr. Repillette, would you join us? If Dr. Repillette would say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. All right. So good to see everyone here today. Give a shout out to my Asbury Park students. I miss you guys. And to my new students throughout the state of New Jersey as the Acting Commissioner of Education, it's nice to see you here as well. So welcome. Good morning and thank you for the awesome introduction and for this wonderful award. When I received the invitation for today's event and noticed that you were presenting me with the Human Rights Award, I have to admit I got emotional. This is an incredible honor because it's personal for me. Early this week, I spoke at an Educational Opportunity Fund Professional Association in New Jersey event in Atlantic City. That was another emotional one. I stand before you today as a man saved by education, which makes this moment all more satisfying and exceptional. When you respect, appreciate, and are open to and interested in learning, the sky is the limit. It broadens your horizons, opens doors, shines like a beacon in the night. It increases personal and professional opportunities 100-fold. Learning can be motivational and inspirational. Learning was the foundation for getting Asbury Park involved with OEATA International, an organization that has been providing educational opportunities and cultural programs and services that complement schools and organizations and the Common Core and Amistad Commission. The founders came to me and pitched the idea of engaging Asbury Park students in a distance learning opportunity connected with students from students in Ghana, Magoon. The mission is to improve cultural sensitivity and cultural experiences. So I thought about, when we talk about global citizenship, especially in urban opportunities where students do not have the ability at times to travel to these places. So I said to myself, this is a great opportunity to really kind of connect individuals from one continent to another. So when I talk about global citizenships to those students, they know exactly what it means. It means the interaction between other individuals, the awareness of individuals in other parts of the country. So I was thankful of the opportunity through OEATA International to provide that opportunity for our students. So every Friday, the kids in Asbury Park would do a video phone conference with kids in Ghana. They would talk about current events. Then they started taking virtual tours through historic sites such as the slave castles in Ghana. Then they started doing community service events. So you notice that it started growing. This connection, this relationship between those students, it started growing. First it was, hello, how are you doing? It's, wow, this is Asbury Park, the shore, the beach. Then it became, well, look at the things that we can offer in Ghana. Slave castles. So it kind of brought them together, and I go back to the theme of global citizenship. Then they raised money for actual supplies. So I'm going to veer off the topic for a second because there was a hurricane that occurred in Ghana during this time of introduction. And one of the students went up to one of the teachers and said, how are our friends doing in Ghana? I heard it was a hurricane in Ghana. And so to me, that gave me an idea that, wow, it's truly working, right? Because global citizenship, the connection, that you had individuals across the water in another continent concerned about groups of individuals in another continent. So that, to me, gave me an idea to say that we're on the right track with this project. So we partnered with Kane University, OEATA International, and LC Homestay to create a human rights service learning project involving environmental studies and climate change. It was life-changing for students, for the adults, and for everyone that were involved in that activity. All of us learned that there is one land and one sea that separates us truly. Students built a mutual bond. They discovered that adolescence is adolescence. Music is music. We share the same sky, stars in the sky, the same emotions, the same fears, the same laughter and love. What started as a whimsical learning project for kids impacted multiple communities, changed perceptions, challenged ideas. We taught kids on both continents and adults that accompanied us the value of global citizenship and that obstacles and challenges have context. Learning. We taught urban kids who struggled in their homes, in their own community with poverty, to have empathy. It also taught them to have hope and to seize opportunity. Learning from their peers in another country taught them to appreciate what they had in their own, and we call that self-concept. I'm equal parts proud and humbled to accept this award. I acknowledge the value and impact of what we started and what still continues today with Asbury Park in Ghana. Thank you to the acting superintendent, Ms. Santra Gay, and the relationship with OEATA International. I also know there's so much more learning to do because we have just scratched the surface It started off as a middle school project. Now it's extended to high school. So we now at Asbury Park, they have high school and middle school students getting the same cultural experience. So since the opening of OIDA International's virtual connection centers, over 300,000 students in 50 states and several countries worldwide have engaged in live face-to-face interaction via video conferencing with Ghanaian students and other students throughout the world. That is what learning is all about. When you engage individuals throughout the world and they realize that they have a common theme, they're just students trying to learn to be young adults. So thank you to everyone who has made this project a success, and thank you to the teachers and the students and the parents that participated and promoted and learning that OIDA International brought us. I am so glad to have been a part of such a transformational journey. I look forward to continuing those kids there, and thank you very much to Dr. Ferrari, the president of Kane University, for this honor. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raphael. Dr. Farahi, Dr. Kaplowitz? Terrific. Okay. Oh, we need you guys to go up that way. For his role in creating future human rights activists, the Human Rights Institute at Kane University is proud to present Dr. Repollet with the 2018 Outstanding Human Rights Educator Award. This year's Human Rights Activist Award is Quan Deloney. Quan, would you join us on stage? Quan, for your commitment to bettering the lives of young people and for serving as an inspirational role model for refugees around the world, the Human Rights Institute at Kane University is pleased to present you with the 2018 Outstanding Human Rights Activist of the Year Award. Next, I'd like to invite Sally Bruno to the stage. For seeing a need and stepping in, and for showing us that one person truly can make a difference, the Human Rights Institute at Kane University is delighted to present Sally Bruno with the 2018 Outstanding Human Rights Community Activist of the Year Award. Next, I'd like to invite Donya Nasser to join us. Donya, you have shown us that it is never too early to answer the call to action. You are an inspiration to young people worldwide, and for that, the Human Rights Institute at Kane University is happy to present you with the 2018 Human Rights Young Adult Activist Award. Finally, I'd like to invite Debbie Rakosny and the Warren Hills Regional High School Human Rights Club to the stage. The Warren Hills Human Rights Club has a proud record of advocacy, actions, and accomplishments for over a decade. The club began as Help Darfur Now Club after students were deeply concerned about the thousands of people in Darfur who were displaced from their villages and killed by the Janjaweed and Sudanese government. Over the years, the club evolved into a human rights club that could expand its focus and address injustices and human rights violations beyond Darfur. They've provided us with a video that gives us an overview of many activities that the club has taken. Oops. Okay. Now, I need you all to move away. Well, we're trying to show a video. You all can move to one side. We'll bring them back. Okay. Okay, can we cue the video now?
You've got the words to change a nation, but you're biting your tongue. You've spent a lifetime stuck in silence, afraid you'll say something wrong. If no one ever hears it, how we gonna learn your song? So come on, come on, come on, come on. You've got a heart as loud as lion, so why let your voice be tamed? Maybe we're a little different, there's no need to be ashamed. You've got the light to fight the shadow, so stop hiding it away. Come on, come on. I wanna sing, I wanna shout, I wanna scream till the words dry out. So put it in all of the papers. I'm not afraid, they can read all about it, read all about it. Oh, 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 At night we're waking up the neighbors while we sing away the blues, making sure that we're remembered, yeah, 'cause we all matter too. If the truth has been forbidden, then we're breaking all the rules. So come on, come on, come on, come on, let's get the TV and the radio to play our tune again. It's about time we got some airplay of our version of events. There's no need to be afraid, I will sing with you, my friends. Come on, come on. I wanna sing, I wanna shout, I wanna scream till the words dry out. So put it in all of the papers. I'm not afraid, they can read all about it, read all about it. Oh, 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 yeah, we're all wonderful, wonderful people. So when did we all get so fearful? Now we're finally finding our voices.
I'd like to call particular attention to the work that the club did this past fall to drive the passage of legislation designating April as Genocide Awareness Month in the state of New Jersey, for helping to place an annual spotlight on the negative impact of bigotry and intolerance throughout history, and helping to promote greater peace, harmony, and understanding. It is my great pleasure to present the 2018 Outstanding Human Rights Student Activists Award to the Warren Hills High School's Human Rights Club and their teacher, Debbie Rakosny. Now we're going to try that photo all over again. So if you will indulge us for just a moment. Thank you. Thank you to all of our presenters and to all of our guests. This brings to an end the 11th Annual Human Rights Conference at Kane University. Thank you to our speakers, staff, and volunteers for another successful year, and to Dr. Farahi for making human rights education a priority here at Kane. I also want to say a special thank you to my predecessor and a former Human Rights Educator of the Year, Janice Kroposky, for all the work that you've done. I hope you found our program today inspirational and informational, and that you leave knowing more about human rights and what you can do to create change and make a more just and peaceful world. Please take what you've learned with you here today back to your schools and your communities. Tell us what you're doing to be an advocate for human rights, and we can highlight your work at next year's conference. Keep a lookout for an announcement of the date and theme in the not-too-distant future. For those of you staying for lunch, we have students in the lobby who can guide you over to Downs Hall. If you'd like a tour of campus, please check in with one of our student ambassadors or consider coming back tomorrow for our undergraduate open house. Thank you so much again for joining us, and have a safe journey home.